Hey guys, we're going to go over some advanced tactics. Some of the stuff we didn't cover, some of the finer details we didn't cover in the basic how to play video. So let's first talk about defensive bursting. We talked in the basics video about how to burst. During the burst step of the resolution order, players have the option to burst. We call this a defensive burst. A defensive burst is when a player bursts to prevent himself from taking damage. Usually it's after losing priority. And it's a common strategy for players with a burst token to play a large, slow attack, hoping it will hit their opponent. If their opponent reveals something that canceled their card or would end up moving them away so they couldn't hit them, they can just decide to burst during the burst phase of the resolution order. However, there are other times when a player can use their burst token. A burst token may also be used whenever a player gets to resolve one of their cards linked in a combo. Meaning a player can burst when they get to resolve one of their own cards. We call this an offensive burst. Players usually use this to deal damage and then burst at the end of their combo, preventing their opponent from being able to deal damage back to them. So let's take a look at an example of this. In this example, Marika reveals Constant Presence and Octavius reveals Fires of Octavia. So let's go through the resolution order. During the meter requirement step, Marika must pay 1 meter to pay for Constant Presence. Then, since no cards have any other abilities that activate before then, we go straight to priority. Constant Presence wins priority, and Marika moves to a more lucrative position on the game board. She then decides to link into Secret Knives, dealing 2 attack damage. Then she decides to link into another Secret Knives, dealing 2 more link damage. Finally, she decides to link into a Constant Presence. Since meter requirement must be paid before bursting, even when linking a card, Marika must pay the 1 meter on her Constant Presence. If Marika didn't have the meter to pay for Constant Presence, it couldn't even be chosen as an option. So, finally, when resolving Constant Presence, she decides to burst. This cancels Constant Presence, not allowing her to move anywhere on the board. However, it means that she can no longer take any damage for the turn. Octavius would now get to resolve Fires of Octavia, like normal, but he couldn't link out of it since he took damage before resolving his card, like normal, nor could he hurt Marika now or move her in any way since she bursted. We call this an offensive burst. So, from the basics video, we covered anti-abilities briefly. We know that during the anti-step, each player gets to resolve anti-abilities. However, we didn't talk about what happens when 2 players resolve anti-abilities during the anti-step. In these situations, each player would secretly anti-meter. However, the amount of meter your character has before doing the anti is public knowledge. So, let's take a look at an example. In this example, Octavius reveals Meaty Fierce and Marika reveals Reign of Pain. Since they both have anti-abilities, each player must secretly anti-meter. To anti-meter, each player takes their stack of meter and palms down an amount on the table. Let's assume that before choosing, the Octavius player has 4 meter and the Marika player has 1. Now remember, these values are public knowledge, meaning before players choose meter to ante, each player would know how much the other actually has to spend. So continuing, Meaty Fierce's anti-ability reads, Ante, add 1 priority for each meter you spend. The Octavius player could spend all 4 of his meter to make his priority a 5. However, Marika's anti-ability reads, Ante, spend 1 meter to change the priority of this card to 4. This means if Marika were to spend her last meter, she would beat Octavius unless he spent all 4 of his. So you can see that the Octavius player has to spend all of his meter to guarantee success. However, the Marika player only has to spend 1 to get 4, but since that 1 meter is more important to Marika, she may just bluff and hope the Octavius player drops all of his meter for nothing. Alternatively, maybe Octavius will call the bluff and just use 1 of his meter to win priority. So Marika would have this concern since trading is in her favor. Since she has more cards with a higher priority in her deck than Octavius, she is more likely to have more high priority cards in her hand than him. Regardless of who wins priority, you can see why players must ante when 2 cards are revealed with anti abilities. Otherwise, if only one person were to reveal an ante card, you could just end up paying the cost if you wanted to during the ante step without having to secretly ante anything at all. A printed priority value is the value right here. Anytime something refers to a printed priority value, this is what it means. Common cards, utility cards, and anything without that symbol counts as 0 when checking priority or being referenced. So we mentioned this in the basics video, but I wanted to specifically convey how important it is to know that a player may pay for and use meter abilities before and or after dealing the damage on a card. So a player may also do this as many times as they would like. That's also really important to note. So in this example, Marika reveals Reign of Pain and is beaten by Octavius's Forward Strong. Now let's assume Octavius has 6 meter. Just an incredible amount of meter. So when resolving Forward Strong, Octavius spends 3 meter to move 3 spaces towards Marika, which puts him adjacent. Now he decides to hit with Forward Strong. Since it's now within range, it doesn't whiff or miss. So now Octavius pays 3 more meter to move back 3 spaces away. Finally, he links into Dash, since Dash can be linked as though it were a medium attack. This moves him another 2 spaces away, putting him out of range of Marika's Reign of Pain. Since Marika took damage, she can't link. Also, her attack misses, and Octavius also deals her 4 damage. So there were some other really good examples I could think of, but this one was the most gratuitous use of meter I could think of that actually happens sometimes. It's pretty common that we get people dropping tons of meter to move a whole lot so that they can hit and then back up and stay out of range. Root is a special ability that only certain characters have, like Reinhardt. This devastating ability functions just like Knockdown, only in addition it prevents an opposing character from moving the next turn, rendering his dash and abilities that move him completely useless. Taunt cards are a fun optional card that players may add to their decks if they choose to play with them. We highly recommend both players using them if one decides to. So let's take a look at what they do. A taunt card is a utility card that can optionally be added to a player's deck. It reads, "This card resolves at priority 1. You may link this card as though it were a medium attack. During the cleanup phase, add this card to your meter. In addition, you may add the top card of your deck to your meter." So a taunt card allows players who link them or are ballsy enough to open up with them to add it to meter when cleaning up. In addition, they can add a card from the top of their deck to meter if they choose. Being knocked down has caused some confusion, so I wanted to go over it just to be a bit more clear. First of all, the only thing being knocked down does mechanically is reduce your priority by 1 on the following turn. So, players who are knocked down may still move, attack, use meter, or otherwise resolve their cards like normal. Being knocked down does in fact affect utility and common cards. Any common card or utility card that would resolve at a specific priority is resolved at 1 less the listed priority. Finally, a player who is knocked down can be knocked down on the following turn, meaning they would have -1 priority for 2 turns in a row.